12 silent Alzheimer's warning signs most people miss. If you think memory loss is the first sign of Alzheimer's disease, here is something most people do not know. For many patients, the very first change has nothing to do with memory at all. It can appear years before a single name is forgotten or a single appointment is missed, and it hides in something as ordinary as the smell of your morning coffee. This video is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose any condition, and it should never replace a conversation with a qualified healthcare professional. Over the next few minutes, we are going to walk through 12 early signs that researchers and clinicians associate with Alzheimer's disease, the most common cause of dementia worldwide. Some of these signs are well known, the kind of thing you may have already heard from a doctor or read in a magazine. Others are so ordinary, so easy to explain away, that families overlook them for years, mistaking them for stress, a busy schedule, or simply getting older. And near the very end of this list is the sign we just mentioned, the one neurologists increasingly believe may arrive before any of the others, quietly, long before forgetfulness ever enters the picture. If you have ever caught yourself wondering whether a small change in you, or in someone you love, might mean something more, staying with us to the end may finally give you a clear answer. Before we go further, it helps to understand something important. Alzheimer's disease does not arrive overnight. According to research published by the Alzheimer's Association, changes in the brain can begin 10 to 20 years before a person ever notices a symptom, which means the signs we are about to walk through together are not a checklist for panic. They are simply patterns worth paying calm, careful attention to, especially when they represent a real and lasting change from how a person used to think, speak, or behave. Number 1, memory loss that disrupts daily life. Everyone forgets things now and then. Misplacing your car keys or blanking on an acquaintance's name at a party is a normal part of being human. The kind of memory loss associated with early Alzheimer's disease looks different. It tends to involve forgetting recently learned information, important dates, or events, and then failing to remember them later even after being reminded. A person might ask the same question several times within a single conversation, not because they are being careless, but because the information genuinely did not stick. Consider Eleanor, a 72-year-old retired schoolteacher from Ohio. Her daughter began noticing that Eleanor would call to ask about a doctor's appointment they had already discussed that morning, sometimes twice in the same afternoon. At first, the family assumed she was simply distracted. It was only after several months of this pattern that they realized something deeper might be happening. Stories like Eleanor's are common, and they illustrate why context matters so much. A single forgotten name means little. A repeating pattern of forgotten conversations may be worth discussing with a doctor. Number 2, challenges in planning or solving problems. Some people in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease experience changes in their ability to develop and follow a plan or to work with numbers. They may have trouble following a familiar recipe or keeping track of monthly bills. Concentration can become more difficult, and tasks that once took minutes may now take a noticeably longer time to complete. This is not simply about being bad at math or occasionally losing focus. It is a shift in the brain's ability to organize sequential steps. A retired accountant, for example, might suddenly struggle to balance a checkbook that he managed effortlessly for 30 years. The frustration this creates can be significant, both for the person experiencing it and for the people around them who may not yet understand what is happening. Number 3, difficulty completing familiar tasks. Routine activities that used to feel automatic, driving to a familiar grocery store, preparing a favorite meal, or remembering the rules of a beloved card game, can start to feel unexpectedly difficult. People experiencing this sign sometimes need help doing things they have done independently for years without a second thought. What makes this particularly hard for families to recognize is that it often happens gradually. A husband might notice his wife pausing longer than usual while making her signature dish, or forgetting an ingredient she has used for decades. Taken alone, this might mean nothing. But paired with other changes, it may be part of a larger pattern worth exploring with a medical professional. Number 4, confusion with time or place. Losing track of dates, seasons, or the passage of time can be an early indicator worth noting. A person might forget where they are or how they got there. They may also have trouble understanding something if it is not happening immediately, almost as though their internal sense of time has become unreliable. This sign can be frightening for families to witness. Imagine a father who has lived in the same neighborhood for 40 years suddenly appearing disoriented 2 blocks from his own home. It is not that he does not recognize the street. It is that, in that moment, the information required to connect where he is with where he needs to be has become harder to access. Number 5, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. For some people, one of the earlier changes involves vision-related problems, even though the eyes themselves are perfectly healthy. This can include difficulty reading, judging distance, or determining color or contrast, which may cause issues with driving. A person might misjudge the distance to a curb while walking, or have trouble navigating a familiar staircase. This is not a problem with the eyes sending signals to the brain. It is a problem with how the brain interprets what it is seeing, which is why an eye exam alone will not explain this particular symptom. Number 6, new problems with words in speaking or writing. People experiencing early Alzheimer's disease may find it hard to follow or join a conversation. They might stop in the middle of a sentence and have no idea how to continue, or they might repeat themselves. They may also struggle with vocabulary, having trouble finding the right word or calling things by the wrong name entirely, referring to a wristwatch as a hand clock, for example. Margaret, a 78-year-old grandmother from Georgia, once paused mid-story at a family dinner and simply said, "I lost it," before quietly changing the subject. Her grandchildren laughed it off as a senior moment. Her daughter, watching more closely, noticed it was happening several times a week, and that Margaret seemed genuinely distressed by it rather than amused. That emotional reaction, frustration rather than casual forgetfulness, is often a meaningful clue. Number 7, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. Everyone loses an item occasionally, but a person showing early signs of Alzheimer's disease may put things in unusual places and lose the ability to go back over their steps to find them again. In some cases, they may accuse others of stealing, not out of malice, but because they have no memory of placing the item somewhere themselves. This symptom may occur more frequently as the disease progresses. Finding the television remote in the refrigerator or a wallet tucked inside a winter glove during the middle of summer might seem like a funny anecdote at first. When it becomes a repeating pattern, accompanied by genuine confusion about how the item got there, it may deserve closer attention. Number 8, decreased or poor judgment. Changes in judgment or decision-making can be one of the more socially noticeable signs. This might involve using poor judgment when dealing with money, such as giving large amounts to telemarketers or falling for scams more easily than before. It can also include paying less attention to personal grooming or keeping oneself clean. Family members sometimes describe this as watching a normally careful, cautious person suddenly become uncharacteristically impulsive. A father who was famously frugal his entire life might suddenly make an unusual, large, unexplained purchase. This shift in judgment is not about intelligence. It reflects changes happening in the parts of the brain responsible for evaluating risk and consequence. Number 9, withdrawal from work or social activities. A person experiencing early Alzheimer's disease may start to remove themselves from hobbies, social engagements, work projects, or sports they once enjoyed. This withdrawal often happens because they are having trouble keeping up with a favorite team, following a conversation, or remembering the rules of a game, and this struggle feels embarrassing or exhausting to navigate in front of others. This is one of the signs most easily mistaken for depression, and clinicians note that the two can sometimes occur together, which is exactly why a proper medical evaluation matters. A person who once hosted the neighborhood book club every month might quietly stop attending, offering vague excuses rather than admitting they can no longer follow the plot of the book being discussed. Number 10. Changes in mood and personality. The mood and personalities of people experiencing early Alzheimer's disease can change in noticeable ways. They can become confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious. They may also be easily upset in situations where they are out of their comfort zone, such as at home, at work, or when trying something unfamiliar. A once easygoing man might become unusually irritable over small disruptions to his routine, like a rearranged kitchen or an unexpected visitor. These are not simply mood swings. They often reflect the very real, disorienting experience of a world that increasingly feels unpredictable, because the internal tools once used to navigate it are quietly becoming less reliable. Number 11. Difficulty recognizing one's own cognitive problems. Interestingly, one of the more complex signs involves reduced or lacking insight into memory loss or other cognitive changes. Some individuals genuinely do not realize, or firmly deny, that anything has changed, even when family members clearly see a difference. This condition, sometimes referred to by clinicians using the term anosognosia, can make early diagnosis more challenging, since the person experiencing the changes may not be the one to raise concerns first. This is often one of the hardest realities for families to navigate emotionally, watching a loved one insist that everything is fine, while quietly recognizing that it is not. It is a reminder that support and observation from people close to the individual can play an important role in early conversations with a doctor. Number 12. Loss of smell, an overlooked early warning sign. Here it is, the sign researchers increasingly believe may appear earlier than almost any other, sometimes years before noticeable memory problems even begin. A growing body of research has connected a reduced sense of smell, particularly difficulty identifying common odors like coffee, gasoline, or bananas, with early changes in areas of the brain affected by Alzheimer's disease. This should not be confused with a stuffy nose or a lingering cold. Researchers are specifically looking at a persistent, unexplained decline in the ability to identify or distinguish smells that were once easily recognized. Scientists at institutions including Columbia University and the University of Chicago have studied this connection using simple smell identification tests, finding that a decreased ability to identify odors was associated with a meaningfully higher risk of developing cognitive impairment in the years that followed. The theory is that the olfactory areas of the brain, the regions responsible for processing smell, are among the earliest to be affected by the biological changes associated with Alzheimer's disease, even before regions tied to memory begin to show measurable decline. Think about Robert, an 81-year-old retired firefighter from Pennsylvania who spent 40 years relying on his nose to detect smoke and gas leaks. One afternoon, his granddaughter opened a jar of fresh basil directly under his nose as a joke, and he simply shrugged. He could not smell it at all. He assumed it was just old age. It was not until years later, after other symptoms appeared, that his family looked back and recognized that quiet afternoon as the earliest clue they had completely missed. It is important to say clearly that a reduced sense of smell can happen for many harmless reasons, including sinus problems, certain medications, or simply the natural effects of aging. This sign alone does not mean a person has or will develop Alzheimer's disease, but research suggests it may be one of the earliest measurable changes, which is exactly why memory specialists say it deserves far more attention than it currently receives. Bringing all of this together, it becomes clear why Alzheimer's disease can be so difficult to recognize in its earliest stages. The changes rarely announce themselves loudly. They arrive quietly, one small shift at a time, easy to explain away individually, and only meaningful when viewed together as a pattern over time. According to the Alzheimer's Association, brain changes associated with the disease may begin 10 to 20 years before any symptom becomes noticeable, which means that early awareness, not fear, but genuine awareness, can make a real difference in how soon a family seeks answers. If any of these 12 signs sounded familiar, whether in yourself or in someone you love, that alone is not a diagnosis. It may simply be the beginning of an important conversation, one worth having with a healthcare professional who can properly evaluate what is going on. Early evaluation does not just bring clarity. In many cases, it opens the door to support, planning, and resources that can meaningfully improve quality of life going forward. Before you go, we would love to hear from you. Which of these 12 signs surprised you the most? Was it the connection between smell and brain health, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments below. Your stories and questions often help other viewers feel less alone in this journey. And if this video gave you something valuable, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it today, and subscribing for more educational content like this. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.